It's a Friday edition of Locked On Grizzlies. Javon Small, Jahmai, Mashack are members of the Memphis Grizzlies after two second-round selections by Memphis. Exciting times. We're going to break down what we know about them to lead off the show here. Plus, I'm going to dive into some of the backlash of the Cedric Coward pick that I saw on social media and also in our comments, to be honest with you, and also what comes next after this draft, what Memphis needs to do moving forward from this point. Let's lock in.
You are Locked On Grizzlies, your daily Memphis Grizzlies podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
It is Friday. You have got to get down on Friday. As the wise philosopher Rebecca Black once said, fun. Looking forward to the weekend. I most certainly am, and I hope you are as well. My name is Joe Mullinax. I am your host for this episode. No DeMichael Cole because of the work that he does as the Memphis Grizzlies beat writer for the Commercial Appeal there in Memphis, Tennessee. He is closing up shop on the 2025 NBA draft, just like we are here on Locked On Grizzlies, but never fret. He will be with you on Monday to discuss what he thought of an impressive second round. I have a feeling there's one pick in particular he's really going to like, but we're going to dive into that here in a moment. Today's episode of Locked On Grizzlies is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code Locked On NBA for $20 off your first purchase. We are free and available wherever you get podcasts as proud members of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team each and every single day. Like, comment, rate, review, subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. Apple, Spotify, Amazon, YouTube. It is literally all good. Make sure that you are an everydayer. If you're not an everydayer at this point, what are you doing? Make sure you're locking in each and every time an episode drops, whether it's me, DeMichael, a combination of the two. We appreciate you guys helping us continue to grow our little corner of the internet that we call Locked On Grizzlies. Two picks for Memphis in the second round, and we're going to lead off with the one that Memphis made first, the player that was selected 48th overall by the Memphis Grizzlies in the 2025 NBA draft, Mr. Javon Small. Now, Javon Small is not a name that we talked about a ton here on Locked On Grizzlies, but the young man out of West Virginia, a senior, 22 and a half years old as of now. This is a guy who checks a lot of Grizzlies boxes in terms of what they're looking for productivity-wise as a guard. Javon Small is a point of attack defender. He is someone that is going to be aggressive on the ball, and you're not expecting guys in the second round, Jalen Wells, barring something similar to that. You're not expecting these guys to come in and be world beaters right away. You're expecting two-way contributions. You're expecting these players to develop in the G League. That's the expectation. Now, that's not always how it works out. Of course, with the Memphis Grizzlies, that's especially true, right? Not always how it works out for them, Wells being the most recent example. But you got G.G. Jackson. You've got Vince Williams Jr. I could see Small being the next one who's on that two-way deal and then gets converted in a year or two. I could certainly see that happening for him. Talented on-ball defender, does a good job defending without fouling, should be a decent NBA three-point shooter, according to Tankathon, big fan. Tankathon had him 49th on their big board. He gets drafted at 48. Makes sense for Memphis to make that pick, at least according to Tankathon. He has lots of good measurables coming from the NBA Combine, a 40.5-inch vertical, which is impressive for a guard his size. He does some things similar to Ja Morant in terms of his explosiveness, a little bit more defense than Ja, but again, obviously not the athlete that Ja is, not the basketball player that Ja is. If he was, he would have been drafted higher than he was selected. But he's going to defend his tail off. He's going to give you effort. And Small is a good example. And Mashack, who we're going to talk more about here in a moment, Mashack, Jahmai from Tennessee, the guy who my co-host, DeMichael Cole, Tennessee volunteer, is surely going to be excited about. Both of these guys can defend. And whether it's Cedric Coward, who we'll talk more about here in a little bit, in a 7'2.5" wingspan, whether it is Small, whether it is Mashack, these are all guys who either are good defenders. Mashack might be the best defender in the entire realm of college basketball this past season. The last pick of the draft after Memphis traded with the Warriors, 56-59, the literal last pick. The funny thing about how Memphis is approaching this draft is it's giving off vibes of when Jaren Jackson Jr. was drafted in 2018, right? The soft rebuild. And you're going to hear that phrase a lot on this episode of Locked On Grizzlies, the soft rebuild. redirecting energy on the defensive end. Because Jaren Jackson Jr., while he was an offensive work in progress at the time, going back 7 years ago now, while he was an offensive prospect in progress, defensively, his potential was always known, right? And then Javon Carter was selected, another small older guard out of West Virginia. And the idea of grit and grind and bringing that mentality, bringing that effort and intensity, that was sold for what Memphis was trying to do. I hope that doesn't happen this time. Okay. And I like both picks. I would have gone in different directions with both picks. I would have gone with a different guard other than Small, but he works, right? Small works. I'm fine with Small being the choice there. I think that you're looking at Mashack as a guy that's going to come in, fight to make the team. Maybe he's a Memphis hustle guy, another two-way contract if he earns it. But I do believe that you're looking at somebody in him that you want to build a new culture, right? You can't say that this team had a culture that was worth saving, at least under Taylor Jenkins at the end, right? That was my eye. Comparing it to something like a grit and grind. And again, grit and grind can't be replicated. That's what makes it so special. There is no other Tony Allen. Maybe Mashack can be close to that, but you're not going to get that same energy, that same combination and organic nature of what grit and grind was. You can't replicate that. What you can replicate is the effort and attitude that those guys brought to the table. And I see these second round selections as steps in that direction. Not leadership. John Morant's not going to take cues from these guys coming out of college, these rookies. But in terms of setting the tone at practice, in terms of establishing and being a part of what Memphis Grizzlies basketball will be in this Tuomas Isalo era, one of the exciting parts of a new head coach is you have a chance to define what the mentality and culture is going to be. And the trade of Desmond Bane, and we'll talk more about this, serves as a reset to the way that we should perceive these Grizzlies. And this draft reinforced that for me. A piece of that is that dog mentality. Zach Kleiman went out on the podium, end of season press availability, and he said, we are going to prioritize defensive dog mentality. And that's exactly what transpired in this draft, especially in the second round. Cedric Coward, a little bit more of a finished product offensively. We'll talk more about him momentarily. But these two guys that got taken in the second round, Mashack and Small, these guys are good point of attack defenders that are going to bring energy, that are going to bring a certain type of desire and hunger that maybe hasn't been present in Memphis for whatever reason. And the great irony in that is, you could argue that the guy that had that the most is the one that got traded, right? Desmond Bane being that 30th overall pick. He wasn't a lottery selection like Jaren or Ja. He had to earn literally everything he got in the NBA. So much so, in fact, that he was coveted so highly by the Orlando Magic to allow for a Coward trade to occur. But what this redirection looks like is going to be bigger than just this draft. And we'll talk more about that later on in the show. You're laying the foundation for what you value moving forward. It may not be a guy that's going to be a starter for you in the future. It may not be a guy who even cracks the rotation. He's an end of bench guy. He's a two-way guy that spends more time with the Memphis Hustle than he does the Grizzlies. None of that would be surprising with these two picks, but what both of these picks do is it shows a clear valuing of a specific type of skill set and a specific type of mentality. That aggressive mentality. The first round pick did the same thing. We'll talk more about that here in a second. But the second round selections in particular, these are two of the better perimeter defenders in college basketball, especially Mashack. Tennessee Volunteer fans are surely happy that another Vol is coming to the Grizzlies. But the biggest piece of this for me is the further confirmation of the redirect, of the pivot. Defense has to be a focus coming out of this season. The offense improved. The defense regressed. You just brought in two guys that are at the very least going to increase the intensity at the end of the roster and allow for a culture to be built around. Again, it starts at the top when it comes to that. I'm sure that'll be a topic we discuss a lot in the coming days and weeks here on Locked On Grizzlies. Let me know in the comments. Hit me up on X. How are you feeling about these two picks? Again, probably not guys that are going to be in the rotation. Memphis hustle, end of rotation guys fighting to be on the roster down the road. But still, I like the point of attack defense. I like the aggression, the fact that these guys are going to lay it all out on the line, the passion that they played with in college. The mentality checks a lot of boxes for me, and the physicality that they bring does as well. When we come back here on Locked On Grizzlies, we're going to talk about people being upset that Cedric Coward was picked at 11 overall by Memphis, the trading up, the quintupling down on youth, whatever the case might be. We'll talk about that next, and the backlash to Cedric Coward. Stick around. Today's episode of Locked On Grizzlies is brought to you by SKIMS. When I found out SKIMS was making underwear for men, I was intrigued. I've heard so much about the quality from friends and family. I had to give it a try, and let me tell you, it lives up to the hype. I've always had issues with underwear. I don't know about you. Fit, comfort, finding the right style for me. SKIMS changed all that. Their men's line offers something for everyone. Boxer briefs to classic briefs, all designed with the perfect balance of comfort and style. I'm a big fan of the 5-inch boxer brief personally. I work out a lot, and I never liked wearing the synthetic feeling workout underwear. When you're done at the gym, it feels kind of weird. When I tried SKIMS stretch boxer briefs, it felt like I found the missing link. They give me all the movement I need for working out without feeling like I'm waking up or walking around in gym clothes for the rest of the day. That means a lot to me. And whether I'm working out or simply running errands, are the most comfortable and reliable underwear I have ever owned. Shop SKIMS Men at skims.com. Let them know that we sent you. And after you place your order, select podcast in the survey and select our show in the drop-down menu that follows. Again, go check out SKIMS today. So Cedric Coward is the first-round pick for the Memphis Grizzlies. And Zach Kleiman went out and talked to the media. DeMichael did a great job discussing that and on yesterday's show. And I think that that selection is something that people should be excited about personally. Obviously, I did the short for us. I did the 5-minute Locked On Podcast Network video for us. Hopefully you watched both of those. And then obviously DeMichael went a little bit more in depth yesterday. The grittiness, the Division III to the number 11 pick in the NBA draft in 5 years. That takes a certain kind of mentality. And the Coach Thorpe article, if you haven't read it, Chris Vernon of Grind City Media had Coach Thorpe and from Henry Abbott's True Hoop. They did a piece about how, for Coach Thorpe, Cedric Coward was the number 2 guy on his board. And he compared him several times to Michael Jordan. Now, not always good comparisons. He compared him to Michael Jordan moving like an old man before he had this reigniting of his athleticism. But the fact that he shot 72% on 2-pointers in college over a pretty large sample size, the fact that so many of his percentages and his measurables line up with that of Cooper Flagg, a couple inches shorter, but he has a couple inches longer wingspan. After reading that article, it's not as crazy as you think. Cedric Coward has a unique story and a unique way to get to where he is now with the Memphis Grizzlies. But I am very excited for Cedric Coward being a member of this organization. And yet, I was surprised. Lots of smart folks. I want to stress that. Not people that don't have, avatars on X or in the comments on YouTube yelling about somebody being an idiot or not knowing ball, that is not actively showing who they are in terms of their identity. I'm talking about folks that I respect, folks that I've worked with before, being very concerned about another young player coming into the Grizzlies and being expected to be an important piece of what they're doing, whether he's a sixth man or there's a starter. That's all stuff that we can talk about down the road. But the using of assets on another young player as opposed to using those pieces to go get a veteran wing. Frustration. And I think that the key point for that frustration, at least if there was a Venn diagram of frustration with the pick, not being a fan of Zach Kleiman as the GM. The people that are not fans of Cedric Coward, I would argue, are not fans of Zach Kleiman. Because it's Zach Kleiman, the Grizzlies GM, who was unable to trade for Kevin Durant. It was Zach Kleiman, the Grizzlies GM, who was unable to interact with the Nets on several occasions, right? Whether it was Mikal Bridges back in the day, whether it was Cam Johnson, Dorian Finney-Smith. It is Zach Kleiman, who, when he was able to take a swing on a Marcus Smart, it fell short. And it's Zach Kleiman who has made the choice to pivot the Memphis Grizzlies into a new chapter of this same Ja Morant era. Make no mistake, the Memphis Grizzlies are worse today than they were 3 weeks ago. Because Kentavious Caldwell-Pope, Cole Anthony, depending on how long he's in Memphis, that's a topic for another episode. Cedric Coward, as great as these guys could be, especially Coward, KCP and Cole Anthony are a little bit more established NBA players. While Memphis might have a little bit more depth, which is important in the modern NBA, as we saw in the finals, while that depth might be a little bit better, the top-end talent is certainly down. Who's the Grizzlies' third best player right now? Genuinely asking. And the fact that that might be a difficult question for you to answer, maybe something that Michael and I tackle next week. That kind of shows you that Memphis has some work to do in terms of building this roster. We'll talk more about that in a moment. But the Cedric Coward backlash going against him as a prospect, thinking that it was the wrong move to select him. DeMichael and I nailed this one. I'm going to pat myself on the back here. I'd pat DeMichael on the back if he was with me. We nailed it. We said CMB or Cedric Coward. Those are the guys we wanted to trade up for. I planted my flag on Cedric Coward Island, and wouldn't you know it, that was the guy that got picked. I love this selection. But I do think that it has to come with the caveat, the asterisk, that we have to take Zach Kleiman at his word when he says that this Grizzlies team is not close. They are not one guy away. And when I hear that, that makes me think that it is accepting Memphis's fate in the short term with what they are in the Western Conference. What is that? Obviously, there's still moves to be made. We'll talk more about what those moves are here in a little bit. But they're not going to go and get some big veteran wing. I don't think so. I'd love to be wrong, because I think it shows that they are committed to trying to compete as they do this soft rebuild, in quotes. But this retooling, this adjustment to the roster, however you want to phrase it, acknowledging that Ja and Jaren are your dudes. It's going to take time to find the other dudes. And Cedric Coward could be one of those other dudes. Look at J-Dub for the Oklahoma City Thunder. That guy is in the third year of his contract. I'm not making a direct connection because every player is different. But Ja and Jaren are what? 26? As they enter their 29-year seasons, and Coward is 24, 25 years old. Could he be that third man on a championship contending team for Memphis? Potentially. You'll still have Zach Edey around. Probably still have Jalen Wells around. There's possibilities there. But it's kicking the can down the road. And I think that is the difference. The backlash shouldn't be going to Coward, because so many people have said that it's such a good pick and such a good decision. The Grizzlies traded the worst of the first-round picks that they got from Orlando. The 2028 unprotected first from the Magic, which is, if assuming the team is healthy, going to be pretty good. Desmond Bane's still going to be on that team. Franz Wagner's still going to be on that team. Paolo Banchero's still going to be on that team. Jalen Suggs is still going to be on that team. 2030, maybe you're a little more unsure of what the Magic will look like. But 2028, they're still going to be pretty good. They traded the worst of those first-round picks to move up and get a guy that numerous NBA draft folks have said is either the steal of the draft, top 5, tremendous talent. Will he be ready to be that for Memphis on day one, in year one? Probably not. It's an acknowledgement that they're not there. It's an acknowledgement that if they went out and got another big name, another talent comparable to Ja and Jaren in the same realm, what are they, the 6th or 7th best team out west? So it's not a tank, and Memphis is never going to tank, and they probably shouldn't, because what would that look like for the Memphis Grizzlies in terms of attendance and all that sort of stuff? That's a topic for another podcast. But it feels like an acknowledgement that because they are not one player away, they need to step back. Doesn't mean that they're not going to compete. Doesn't mean they're not going to try to make the playoffs. They'll be in the play-in conversation because as long as Ja and Jaren are healthy, they have two of the top 25 to 30 best players in the NBA. But it's going to be the play-in conversation. Are we ready to accept that? Let me know in the comments. Hit me up on X. When we come back here on Locked On Grizzlies, next steps, given that bombshell I kind of just dropped, my new expectations for this Grizzlies team, what do they do next? What matters? There's something they need to do pretty soon, in my opinion, before July 1st. Stick around here on Locked On Grizzlies. Today's episode of Locked On Grizzlies is brought to you by Game Time. Have you ever decided at the last minute that you want to go to a ball game with friends or family? It might be game day and you suddenly realize you want to go and be a part of the process. You want to be in the stands. That's exactly where Game Time comes in. It's the easiest way to grab last minute tickets without the stress. You win the money, or with the money, that you save on the tickets. You can splurge on food, drinks, merch, or even invite a bigger group to come with you. Game Time makes all that possible. And they also make buying tickets fast and simple. Prices on the app actually drop the closer that you get the first pitch. And they have incredible last minute deals, clear seat views, a lowest price guarantee that takes all the worrying out of buying. Plus, they have seat views right in the app before you buy, so you know exactly where you will be. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem the code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off. Download the Game Time app today. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. So next steps, what do the Grizzlies need to do? Well, first off, they need to free up some money because the move from 16th overall to 11th overall added about $1.5 million to $2 million to the Grizzlies cap ledger. Now, remember, they're still technically under the cap, even with their cap holds and all that sort of thing. So they can still maneuver and do deals. And remember, they traded the 2028 Orlando first, so they still have access to all of their own first-round picks. Now that the draft is concluded from 2026 to 2031, all of those firsts are in the mix for Memphis. However, they need to free up additional salary because of that key phrase that DeMichael and I have stated on this program numerous times. Renegotiate and extend. That amount of money has shrunk now because of the welcoming of Cedric Coward to Memphis. So that might be best for the long-term vision of the Grizzlies. It's important to have major contributors on rookie contracts. Again, the Oklahoma City Thunder have shown us that. So while these picks may work out in the long run, in the short term, the cost of that beyond draft capital is Jaren's not going to accept a renegotiate and extend with less money. They got to get off some cash. How do they do that? They can renounce Luke Kennard, which is almost certain at this point. Cam Spencer's right there. I could see him coming off of a two-way deal and being signed to a full roster spot for Memphis. But they also could trade somebody like John Konchar. Now, friendly reminder, they've been trying to trade John Konchar for 2 years, and I have been sitting here for 2 years, fingers crossed, nothing against John Konchar personally, but I think his $6 million salary to be an end-of-bench player is kind of crazy. They have to find somebody that is willing to take on that Konchar deal, an elite rebounder as a wing, somebody who contributes to winning basketball, but just doesn't shoot enough or have enough of an offensive skill set scoring to be someone that can play consistently in the NBA. How do they get off of that? It might take draft capital. It might take waiting a little bit, a couple of days, see how the dust settles, who has salary cap money, who's willing to take on a Johnny Konchar. We know that Boston has sniffed around Konchar in the past. We know that Miami has been interested in the past. Those are reports from DeMichael and elsewhere. So there's been interest. But what is the reality in terms of making it a thing? Do they have to be the third team in a trade over these next few days before free agency starts next week? Do they have to be a team that gives up considerable, a couple of second rounders, a protected future first? Is that worth keeping Jaren Jackson Jr.? Because if you get that $6 million or so off of your cap ledger, now you're in a better position to do that renegotiate and extend with Jaren. Makes up for the $1 million or so that you added with the Coward trade. But it might have to be bigger than that. You have to figure out how to free up money so that that extension can get done. Because if you don't get that extension done, I consider that a massive failure. Part of the argument for moving on from Desmond Bane is the new CBA in the second apron. You have 2 max contract players. Jaren's your guy. You made that choice. Jaw's still here. He's your guy. You made that choice. And Jaren and Jaw are the 2 best players. They both are better than Desmond Bane when they're healthy and on the court. Fine. You made that call. Got to get him extended. Got to lock that in. That's going to be a way to show these Grizzlies fans that you are still serious about long-term contention. Got to get that done, and you got to be willing to do what needs to be done to free up that money to get it done now. The Santi Aldama extension is something to keep an eye on in the next days to come. Santi, an important floor spacer, offensive weapon, almost 7 foot tall, does a lot of important things that the Grizzlies need, especially in the wake of Desmond Bane being moved on from. How do you get that extension done? Do you let him hit the market? Allow to see what these restricted free agent offers could be? A sign and trade, which is possible. Memphis might be interested in that because Santi, as we've talked about before here on the show, does not align with that dog mentality type of player that Memphis has said in the last several weeks they're seeking, and the NBA draft backs up those words. That's not Santi. So is he longed for this Grizzlies life? Something to keep an eye on. They have to make a choice there. And they also have to decide, they have a lot of guards now. And they have several wings, like a Vince Williams Jr., a Gigi Jackson. We talk about freeing up money for the extension. Another way you could do it is moving on from a Jay Huff, who's not a wing, but you got a lot of bigs too. Maybe you move on from a Vince Williams Jr. or Gigi Jackson. I don't know that I would personally do that. I would invest draft capital in getting off of the Conchar deal. That's the first thing I would do. And I would seriously consider a sign and trade involving Santi Aldama that brings less money back to Memphis. Smaller type of trade. Because Santi, he has talent and he certainly checks boxes that the Grizzlies value offensively, but is he going to be the defender that Desmond Bane wanted him to be when they had that brush up in the huddle this past season? Is he going to be that dog that does the things Memphis needs? DeMichael pointed out on a recent episode, he's improved as a rebounder. Maybe he can improve as a defender. And you certainly don't let an asset type of talent like Santi Aldama walk for nothing. So the Jaren Jackson Jr. extension remains my priority. That is the next thing to continue to keep an eye on. How do they free up money to get that done now? Santi Aldama is the next priority after that. Making a choice. Is he a part of the future of this organization or not? Because you've got Santi, you've got Brandon Clark. Do you sign Santi or match in restricted free agency just to have another tradable contract? If a team offers him 4 years, $72 million, do you say yes just because that's $18 million on average a year that you can pair with other deals to try to make a trade down the road? I think the answer is yes. If they do something crazy like 3 years, $75 million, maybe you say goodbye to Santi. But you have to maintain your vision of what you want this to look like coming out of the Desmond Bane trade, coming out of the firing of Taylor Jenkins and the hiring of Tuomas Isalo. You have a window here to reestablish this era of Grizzlies basketball. What are you going to be about in this era of Ja Morant, the most talented player the Grizzlies have ever had? This era of Jaren Jackson Jr. We're getting close to being able to say he's the second most talented player the Grizzlies have ever had. What do you do with these two guys? How do you build around them? Santi is a major chip that has to fall, and how they interact with the other similar contract players around him will be worth watching in the days and weeks to come. Thanks so much for being with me on this episode of Locked On Grizzlies. I will not be with you the next couple of shows. I mentioned several days ago my grandmother passing away. Funeral stuff's coming up this weekend. So DeMichael will have you guys on the Monday and Tuesday editions of the podcast. I'm sure he's going to be talking second round, draft or a draft pick press conferences, all sorts of special things, the lead up to free agency. I will be back with you guys on the Wednesday edition of the podcast. Thanks to everybody that has sent well wishes, condolences, all that stuff means a lot to me and my family. I will see you guys middle of next week. DeMichael's got you the next couple of episodes. Now that you've made Locked On Grizzlies your first listen today, for your second listen, find the Locked On NBA podcast where there is no offseason. Doug, Matt, and Hayes keep you up to date on contract negotiations, rumors, and everything you need. Be the most informed NBA fan. Find Locked On NBA on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team each and every single day. Like, comment, rate, review, subscribe wherever you get podcasts, Apple, Spotify, Amazon, Google, YouTube. Make sure you're making DeMichael and I part of your NBA and Memphis Grizzlies content consumption each and every time that an episode drops. We will continue to keep an eye on this organization, how they retool, how they redirect. Soft rebuild, maybe a little far to go, but I think it's an acceptance of the reality of where the Grizzlies currently are. Do you agree or disagree with my perspective? They're a play-in team, and perhaps even below that, depending on how things go. Hit me up on X. Let me know in the comments. Let's start that conversation that I'm sure will continue as the offseason grinds forth. Thank you guys again. Congratulations to the Memphis Grizzlies on a successful 2025 NBA draft. What comes next matters most, however. See ya.